Anonymous sources is just a way for the media to literally get away with fake news and face no repercussions. I'm really sick and tired of the whole according to anonymous sources thing in news media, and I just immediately shut down whenever I hear it now. I lost all faith in the media in 2014, and part of it had to do with outlandish headline and ridiculous article which was all according to anonymous sources. This is just a way for profit-driven corporate media to get away with generating literal fake news to get clicks and face no backlash because they're not legally required to disclose their sources if they wish to remain anonymous. I also think this is a major problem with the Western world that needs to be addressed moving forward. People as a whole need to stand up and say that they won't accept this garbage anymore. I think all news from corporate media should need a disclaimer that X news agency is a for-profit entity, so people are reminded that these companies make money off of your outrage. Without anonymous sources, a lot of things would never be brought to light. It's a necessary evil basically. Whistleblowers need their anonymity protected, or soon you will have zero whistleblowers. Until you have some to report anonymously for fear of being fired, harmed, or ostracized. Reminds me of Alex Jones, where he would link sources in his YT video, they would link to his website, and the sources on his website links to his YT. Anonymous sources mean that the media knows who the source is but they don't reveal it. Being able to promise anonymity to a source keeps them protected. So is somebody said or somebody told me or you'll see it in 2 weeks. Well, since I don't know your name, I won't take this opinion seriously. Yeah, Nixon tried this to discredit Woodward and Bernstein. https://www. New York Times. com/1972/10/17/archive/3 aides of Nixon denounce disruption tactic charges articles called HTML. It goes without saying. Mr. Ziegler went on that this administration does not condone cabotage or espionage or the surveillance of individuals or preparing dossiers on them, but the administration does not condone innuendo or source stories that make broad sweeping charges about the character of individuals. By source stories, Mr. Ziegler was referring to, as well as complaining about, articles based on sources whose identities are not disclosed. When Mr. Ziegler was pressed to deny the allegation today, he replied, "I am not going to comment on stories based on hearsay, or where innuendo or character assassination is involved. I am not going to dignify that with a comment." Judging from a series of interviews with key Nixon aides, the essence of this strategy has been to avoid direct debate over the content of the charges, hence Mr. Ziegler's refusal today to dignify them, while at the same time, keeping the general public off balance about the reliability of the newspapers that have printed the charges. Didn't work so well. Try again. My favorite is Trump's lines like, "Have you heard all these people are talking about underscore 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 underscore?" And then he makes something up. I'm gonna make a flying stab in the dark and guess you don't work in a job that has anything to do with the media. Some of the most important sources in history, Deep Throat was an anonymous source. The use of anonymous sources is not inherently wrong. Is it often the only way to get proper information? Let's say you are covering the Hong Kong situation. Do you really think you would have many sources if you had to reveal who they were? This is the gold standard for an opinion that is kinda right, but mostly just wrong. Sure, you shouldn't trust anonymous sources without thought, but not because the media company involved is trying to pull the wool over your eyes. The anonymous source is anonymous to the public, but not to the media company. The idea that a journalist would outright fabricate a story, pass it to his editor who doesn't question the sourcing, and it just gets published to support the ideology of the person involved is ludicrous. That situation just doesn't happen at real publications. I'm talking NYT, WP, Economist, Reuters, etc. It may happen at smaller online-only publications such as Breitbart, but I think we all know that isn't what UP means. Real editors and publishers ask questions about anonymous sources, and if they don't get good answers, the piece doesn't get published. FYI, the reason you shouldn't necessarily trust an anonymous source is because they are probably too close to the situation. An anonymous source citing Nancy Pelosi's strategy intentions is probably Pelosi herself or a senior member of her staff, and it is probably self-serving in that respect. If you don't want to trust it, I hear you, but it's not because the writers are making things up out of whole cloth. As he types this from an anonymous account. A good news broadcaster, paper, or website will get a tip from an anonymous source, then do their own investigation and get their own evidence or get evidence from the source, document, photos, etc. If a news article comes out with its only source being anonymous, don't trust it. If a news article comes out saying they got an anonymous tip then presents other information, you can more likely believe it. It's a catch-22. Let's say there are times when they fake having a source, that doesn't mean there aren't times when they have a real source who needs to stay anonymous to protect their lives. There's no way to fix this problem. Actual unpopular opinion: the media is mostly trustworthy, but there is a targeted attempt to undermine trust in the mainstream media so literal fake news can be spread. If it isn't the fake news brigade, anonymous sources are how things get done. I will trust the use of anonymous source based on the credibility of the network. Which is why I trust mainstream media over these smaller media sources. Anonymous source from CNN has far more credibility than, say, Alex Jones Network. Unpopular opinion. A lot of opinions posted on unpopular opinion as an opinion are just really dumb opinions. Checks post history. How did I fucking know? The Donald. The New Right. Republicans. Educating liberals. You're so predictable, LMAO. I do think that according to anonymous sources is at times overused. However, if their sources' names were put out in the media, some sources wouldn't be safe. So there is good and bad that comes along with using this phrase. You should watch All the President's Men. This addresses the anonymous sources issue you're talking about and why we really use it. It can be what you are saying. But I worked as a journalist for 5 years in a major newspaper, and I can tell you that allowing a real, legitimate source to remain anonymous is often the only way to get them to talk on the record at all. It's not ideal, but sometimes you have to use an anonymous source to get a real story. Protection of journalistic sources is one of the fundamentals of journalism, without which journalism would not be able to do what it is primarily entitled to do, that is, informing the public with truthful information. Unpopular. Often anonymous sources protect whistleblowers who bring important, and also often dangerous information to the public via news media. It depends a ton on the story that's being covered and can't be so generalized as you've tried to hear. Besides, if someone has information that they know would put them into a really tight spot should the wrong people find out, you better believe I would do whatever I could as a journalist to ensure they weren't placed at unnecessary risk. Anonymous sources are how we find out about some of the most important things that corporations and/or governments would rather sweep under the rug. Without as, we lose as citizens the opportunity to keep government and business in check when they mess up. If you don't like it, figure out a better way. People don't care about the source when it's something they want to hear. Popular opinion: you are using anonymous sources to justify your inability to separate media bias from lies. The media is biased, yes, but many of them don't outright tell you lies. Many things that have been revealed by anonymous sources are ultimately true, Watergate being the obvious example. Your problem is that you can't tell the difference between something you disagree with and a lie. Just make up a name then. Deep Throat revealed a lot of truth about power. It's a double-edged sword. A lot of people simply won't speak up if they can't have anonymity. But it makes it easy for news outlets to say whatever they want under the guise of an anonymous source. In my opinion, we're better off allowing anonymous sources. Patently false. Anonymous sources are a huge part of journalism and one of the reasons people are willing to risk their necks to come forward with sensitive information. It never ceases to amaze me that US citizens have no grasp on how to vet or filter what they read, who wrote it, what track record that author and that publication have, and who owns the publication. If you understand how real journalism works, and who is a reliable source of information, then you can learn who and what to read, and also how to read between the lines. Please take a college-level journalism class at a decent university or college, and also take an English class, at least AP or advanced 4-year degree. Read the biography of Edward R. Murrow. Do yourself a favor and go read all the questions a critical thinker is supposed to ask. Sigh. It's to protect whistleblowers, but you're right, something really needs to be done about these news sources. Also, authorities, what happened in 2014 that made you/others lose faith in anonymous sources? Help, I'm dumb. Popular, reports say that anonymous sources may allege possible events. I understand the opinion, but disagree with the sentiment. Journalism has always relied on sources and their ability to speak on background. We would never have learned about Watergate without that practice. I think it would be more accurate to say that the rapid news cycle driving journalists to shoot first and ask questions later is the problem. Without thorough vetting, plus the heightened partisan environment, anonymous sources are not as trustworthy to the public as they used to be. Popular, Wall Street Journal. According to people familiar with the matter. Once again, not unpopular. The mainstream media is cancer, best not to engage with it at all, it's literally propaganda for hire. My favorite phrase from articles or just idiots online is studies show that. Agreed, for all the good it does to protect a whistleblower, it is abused to give credence to complete fabrications.